Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here today. This is my first campaign for county supervisor, and I told my husband I was super nervous today. I said, you know, I've done it for so many times as a legislator, but now as a supervisor, I think it's that stage fright that everybody has, or that nightmare that everybody has, that you're going to put on an event and then nobody shows up. So thank you all for being here. I do want to make some recognitions of folks that are here and some thank yous. But first of all, I would like to thank my husband, John Magley, for providing the music tonight. He's been out of work for 5 weeks after major surgery, so this has been a big feat for him to be here. So, yeah, he starts back to work on Monday, so he said he'd rather do more gigging, though. I want to thank Phyllis Peters. Where is Phyllis at? I saw her. She helped coordinate this entire event. So there she is, right in front, yes. Event coordinator extraordinaire. Thank you so much, Phyllis, for all that you've done. I also want to thank everyone else who's helped with the beverages, the food, the registration table, the flags, the sound system, and the decorations. You know, I certainly can't do any of this without all of your support and your assistance, and it's really great to have the level of support that I do have here, so thank you all so much. I'd also like to recognize a few elected officials, some local elected officials that are here. Loris Olson, County Supervisor. Sorry. I did used to work for a restaurant. I apologize. You know, you recognize somebody right when they, Linda Merkin, my other colleague at the County Supervisors. I know that Beth Wessel-Crushell, my colleague that I had in the state legislature, is here. Thank you, Beth, for being here. We have our sheriff, Paul Fitzgerald, Sheriff Fitz. I know we have our vice president, or our vice chair is here, Dustin Mason. Dustin was right here. Where did Dustin go to? He may have stepped out, but Dustin's here, so thank him for being here as well. And then we do have our former county supervisor, Jane Halliburton's here. And I did see former Senator and Child and Family Policy Center Director, Charlie Bruner here. Oh, and I guess I should say I would be remiss if I did not also recognize our former chair, Jan Bauer, who is here. And our vice chair at that time was Brent Winya. Thank you for both being here. I know when I first ran for office back in 2002, they were both a huge help, and I've appreciated their guidance over the years and stuff. So, again, thank you all for being here. It's exciting that you all turned out, especially with the weather that we had today. You're never quite sure if people are going to stay home because it's too nice, or say, hey, that's a great night to be out and go to an event. So thank you so much. You know, I was honored to serve as your representative for House District 46 for 17 years. And now it's just as humbling to serve in the capacity as county supervisor. And I've had a number of people that have asked me, you know, Lisa, you're the health policy wonk. You know, what are you doing learning about drainage ditches and secondary roads? So, you know, I've gone back to them and I said they're all equally important. They're all part of how government runs smoothly. And I can take the expertise that I've had over those 17 years in the legislature, work to implement initiatives here locally. And so that was one of the reasons why I put my name in the hat to be appointed to the position. It is exciting. I didn't realize when I had done that and when I was appointed that I would be serving with 2 other individuals that made up the first all-female Board of Supervisors in the history of Iowa, in the state of Iowa. That is quite the feat, and I know when I've worked with other supervisors, they are a little surprised at that, but also thrilled that we've have three very independent people with different perspectives and big different strengths and traits to the table for discussions. You know, one of the things with county government, we certainly want to make sure that we have a sound budget that we're working on, that we serve as that connection to constituents and county services. One of my big issues that I've been working on is into ensuring that we have a good, healthy mental health system in the state of Iowa. That is something that I worked on, as well as Representative Wessel Kershell at the state level, but a number of factions on that do fall on local government. And we do have some challenges, particularly when we are constrained by the amount of money that we, at the county levels, or at the region level, I should say, can raise to implement a variety of services. So we have to be making sure that we are having some ingenuity, that we're creative, and that we are having sound policies and sound support services, because that is a huge issue, not only county-wise, not only state-wise, but also nationally, is that we are addressing mental health. The legislature also passed legislation that identified that we needed to provide services for children, which was sorely needed. We certainly had a very siloed system in the state of Iowa, no mental health kind of coordination for children, but other things are going to fall on the counties in delivering those services with the same money that we have for the adult system, no additional dollars there. So that is something that we're just going to have to really work together and lobby our legislators, which will be new for me to come down to the Capitol and put my pink or green note in to call Beth or Ross or whomever out to the chambers and be able to talk to them on how it is impacting locally. But I do feel thrilled that I've had those relationships build up, that I feel like I can talk to her and give my perspective on things. You know, some of the things that we also want to do at the local level is we want to make sure that we help local communities prosper and grow. We want to look at gaps within our counties, the county system as well. So whether we're looking at the need for affordable housing, childcare, transportation, having clean water and enhancing our natural resource systems, that's all something that local government works on, and we work on it in concert with our state legislators as well as the federal legislators as well. So there's certainly a role that we have for all of us, and I just appreciate the opportunity to serve in the capacity right now, and I hope to continue to serve as your county supervisor come 2020. Because I was appointed, instead of serving a 4-year term, I have the unique ability of I will be on the ballot in 2020. Should I win in 2020, I'm also on the ballot then in 2022. And if you win in 2022, then you fulfill that 4-year term. So just to give that little bit of education on how things are going right now. So I'm used to running for 2-year terms. Did that a number of times, but this will certainly be at a different level or different capacity of doing that. So I do want to thank you all for being here tonight. We do have several guests that I want to hear from. I'm thrilled that we have J D Scholten that is here to talk a little bit about his campaign. And I did a little bit of research on JD. I went to your website. So I do know that JD is a 5th-generation Iowan. And I did not realize this, and maybe you mentioned this before, JD, but he was born right here at Mary Greeley, here in Ames. Yes, did not realize that. At the age of 3, his family moved from the town of Nevada to Sioux City, where he grew up and first played baseball. After college, JD pursued a professional baseball career, and between baseball seasons, he began a career as a litigation paralegal, specializing in intellectual property and trial law. This career taught him the ins and outs of law, good governance, and how to fight for people's rights. JD ran against Steve King in 2018, and he's taken another run, and I expect he's going to win in 2020. Please help me join or welcome J D Scholten.
All right. So there we go. Got it. Sorry. Yeah. So I was born just up the street here. my mom reminds me every birthday, 10 pounds, 2 ounces. And so, yeah. I've been standing tall for a long time. So, I just wanted to come up here and support Lisa and talk a little bit about our campaign. And it's I think a good segue for running for county supervisor. Our first 39 county tour this time, we're going into towns of 1,000 people or less, and we call it the Don't Forget About Us tour. And yeah, and what's amazing is we don't hear the stories at these town halls that we're seeing in maybe in the Washington Post or the New York Times. What we're seeing are a lot of folks fighting to keep their local grocery store, or fighting for the EMS. I know in Pocahontas County, they're fighting to keep that one ambulance for the whole county. And so those are some of the realities that are in this 4th district. And what goes to the heart of why we're running is because we have a congressman that doesn't, well, I'm trying to say this politically. It's one of those things where, you know what, there's only so much you can let go, and all the craziness and the racism and all that, that's one thing, but the not showing up for the people, that's a whole nother part of it too. And so that's what our campaign's about. We're going to all these places, not writing anybody off. And what's amazing, we were in Albert City a couple nights ago, and the gentleman who helped put the event together there was a former county chair, and he goes, I know every Democrat in this city or in this town, and half that crowd was not Democrats, and it was a very positive event. And so that's the type of things, yeah. So when you get out there to the people, and then again, I brought this theory that I learned from a lot of people, but my 2 political heroes, Berkeley Bedell and Tom Harkin, if you get out there to the people, prove that you're trustworthy, and prove that you're going to fight for your constituents, you're going to earn votes. And unfortunately right now, the RV needs a little exhaust issue, so we don't have the RV here today, but Sioux City Sioux's been clucking around the district already. We'll just get that fixed, and as long as the snow holds off a little bit, we'll continue to get out there. And so I'm not sure the next time we're going to be here in Story County, but it won't be too long. And lastly, I just got to say thank you so much for a lot of people in this room that helped us move the needle 24 points, which is the 3rd most in the nation amongst all challengers. And there's so much that I just couldn't let go. We had too much energy and too much excitement, and I just remember last cycle breaking the 3 times we went to all 39 counties. And the first time going around, I got the sense that people were like, God bless you, somebody should run against him. and the second time it was, oh, you're just not bashing Steve King, you're standing for something. And that's something that we're very proud of we're fighting for stuff and not just bashing the other side. And the third thing was that last time, going into these small towns last time when we're seeing our yard signs or getting the thumbs up in the RV, you saw the hope. And that hope is right in here, and we haven't been able to let go because we picked up right where we left off. And just the number of Republicans I see in Sioux City who have come to me and said, I'm so excited you're running again. We got 25,000 more votes than there are registered Democrats in this district. Yeah. So with that, I'll be back. Thank you so much, Lisa, for having us. This is absolutely wonderful. It reminds me a little bit of church. We filled it in a little bit, but usually everyone sits in the back and then works their way up. But thank you so much for having us. My name's J D Scholten, and I continue to stand tall for all.
Good job, good job. Hello, everybody. Isn't it great to be a Democrat? Tell you, how lucky are we here in Story County to have such a talented person come in with such understanding, with such education, with such experience, and to come in and step right in as a supervisor in Story County. But I tell you, it wasn't easy to get her to throw her name in the hat. You know, some things you just get addicted to, like campaigning every 2 years. So we had to work real hard so she could come in and kind of wean her way into this and still campaign every 2 years for the same jobs. But anyway, we all know that is the purpose of the fundraisers here is we all know it takes money to run a campaign. This is Lisa's first time as the Story County Board of Supervisors. We really like the work she's doing. We want to keep her as a member of our team and working for us here in Story County. So we have our designated person that's going to be coming around here, right back here, and passing the hat. So please dig down deep and be generous. And let's see what we can pull together for Lisa. Just a little bit of extra kicker here. And as a matter of fact, when she gets done going around the tables, I have my own contribution here. So I hope everyone here outdoes what I'm giving. You know, when I first came in here tonight, Lisa kind of comes over to me and we're talking, and she goes, you know, I'm nervous. I sure hope people come tonight. And I think, boy, what a great turnout this is. But under my breath, I'm thinking, Lisa, you got this event scheduled right between Iowa's playing Wisconsin and Iowa State's playing Oklahoma. I thought there might be 5 of us, but it turned out to be a great turnout tonight. And I tell you, that just shows, I think, the kind of draw that Lisa has and the dedication of folks that support her. I was down in Miami this last week on a committee I'm on for the Department of Homeland Security on SAFECOM, a public safety communications group. And I'm out one night having dinner with a couple of the guys, and one of the guys, you know, you're talking about stuff going on in Washington, and he says, Paul, you can't make this stuff up. It's just unbelievable. And this morning I get up and I'm watching the news and I hear that Putin has given an invitation to Trump to come to their May Day celebration. And he said he's considering it. Now, how great is that? Our president going over to celebrate communism in Russia. Oh, man. So anyway, I tell you, this is why when I started out, I said it's great to be a Democrat. There's no better time to be a Democrat, to protect democracy, protect our country, and stand for the values. And right now it seems the Democrats are the only ones standing for the values. So we need to get people like Lisa Heddens back in here because we know where she stands and we know the strengths that she brings. So with that, Lisa, I think the pot's beginning to boil over there, so I'll turn this back over to you.
Thank you, Paul. And I do want to recognize someone who snuck in. I didn't see him right away, but former Boone County Supervisor Bill Lesher is here. Thank you for coming in, Bill. Now, our next guest speaker, I am thrilled to have here. It's the Honorable Bob Kerrey. Bob Kerrey is the Managing Director at Allen & Company. He's also the Executive Chairman of Minerva Institute for Research and Scholarship, supporting the Minerva Project, an exceptional liberal arts and sciences and education. From 2001 to 2011, Mr. Kerrey was president of the New School, a university founded on democratic ideals and daring educational practices. On his watch, the New School experienced unprecedented growth in enrollment, faculty, scholarships, capital projects, research, and international engagement. From 1989 to 2001, Mr. Kerrey represented Nebraska in the Senate, where he promoted equity for rural communities, led in farm and environmental legislation, strengthened taxpayers' rights, led in restructuring our intelligence agencies, and partnered with local leaders to build projects of lasting value to Nebraskans. His public service since leaving the Senate includes the 9/11 Commission, Advisory Board of the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans Association, co-chair of the Concord Coalition, and the Natural Resources Defense Council. Prior to his Senate service, Mr. Kerrey served one term as Nebraska's governor. Before entering politics, he was a businessman who helped build a chain of restaurants and health clubs employing over 1,000 people. Mr. Kerrey served as a U.S. Navy SEAL during the Vietnam War. For his service, he received the Medal of Honor. And while in Vietnam, he was wounded, permanently disabled, and received from this injury a great gift. a sympathy for those who are suffering, and an appreciation for the capacity of government to save your life. Mr. Kerrey earned his Bachelor of Science degree in pharmacy from the University of Nebraska. He is married to Sarah Paley, and they live in New York. They have an 18-year-old son, Henry, and Mr. Kerrey has 2 children from her previous marriage, Ben and Lindsay Kerrey, and 4 grandchildren. I am so thrilled that Bob Kerrey was able to be here today. You know, there are a lot of great presidential candidates out there, and we've heard from a number, and you know, I chose who I was endorsing back in May. And I've still gone to a number of the other ones to listen to because I like to be a very informed electorate, but I had endorsed Joe Biden. I had met him back in 2005, but there's one thing that really resonated with me that I've always remembered is back in 2009, if you all remember, that was the year that the H1N1 was going around, and it took quite a while for the vaccine to become available. I remember being over at Sheeman when it finally did come available, and it was just lines and lines to get your vaccination. Well, I have 2 adult children. My youngest turns 25 on Thursday, who has an intellectual disability. And my son, Paul, before that vaccine became available, contracted H1N1. And he spent 3 weeks in the hospital with 2 different forms of pneumonia. And who called to find out how Paul was doing but was Joe Biden. I have never forgotten that. Of all the people that he had met nationally, he called to see how my son was doing. And then he called again for his birthday. And then he sent him a basketball book, because Paul's usually into sports, for Christmas. Paul just saw him just last week and went right up to him to give him that big hug that he loves to get from the Vice President. So I am just thrilled that Bob Kerrey was here to say a few words on behalf of Biden, but also to just kind of talk about the political landscape that we're dealing with right now. So please join me in welcoming Bob Kerrey.
Well, I'm not as tall as you, J D, but Lisa, thank you very much. Joe actually asked me to come here, and I'm really glad I did. I mean, first of all, I'm alive today because of Iowa State. My parents met there. And my mom grew up on a farm about 50 miles to the west of here. My dad grew up in Chicago, came here, and they got married. And 7 kids later, I think they're pretty happy they came here. So Lisa has taken on a really difficult issue. You guys are lucky to have somebody that's experienced in the legislature now willing to step up and be a county supervisor and run twice. I mean, most people say, "Oh, I'm checking off. I'll go travel with my husband and do some fun things or something." But I'm really impressed that you're willing to do it, and particularly your interest in mental health and your concern for mental health. My oldest brother was born in 1939, and he had some educational problems. And this is before the federal court said that all is all when it comes to education. And prior to that, we didn't have special education. And in about the 10th grade, he was kicked out of school because they didn't know what to do, didn't have any capacity or any willingness to help it. So it's a big change that we now say all is all. And I know the challenges of mental health because I've spent the Iraq and Afghan guys have a lot of PTSD, a lot of mental health issue. I'm very close to the CEO of Intermountain Healthcare out in Salt Lake City. 20% of adolescents in Utah have planned their suicide. This is one of the issues that sort of we don't really like to talk about very much. And yes, we've made a lot of progress. We now say mental illness and physical illness are got to be treated equally, but there's still a bit of a stigma, and there's still a bit of unwillingness to step forward and say, I've got something here that needs to be treated. I still have reluctance. People have reluctance to say they have depression. People have reluctance to say they've got a mental illness. And I'm so glad that you guys in this county are so lucky to have somebody got experience in the legislature, still passionate about this, willing to work on that and roads and all the other sort of things supervisors have to do. So next time I talk to Joe Biden, I'm going to thank him for asking me to come here, because I was so moved by your experience and so moved by what you're trying to do, and so moved by so many people showing up on a Saturday night when you got two Iowa teams playing football. So, and JD, I'd heard about you before, that you'd run against King, who is a despicable human being. So I don't have to, you know, I don't have to worry about whether or not voters are going to be mad at me. I mean, I'm in both cases, and I put a little money in the bowl, but I'll tell my wife we're going to write checks to both of you, because I really, it's uncommon that you have really decent, good people who are just stepping forward and wanting to run. And in the too long introduction I made, I was governor for 4 years, but when I was in the Senate, the most pleasurable thing I had was coming at the local level and helping people build a park, build a child care center, build some extension of their high school, and it always falls to local leaders. Their willingness to step up. There's always going to be somebody wanting to say no to somebody stepping up and wanting to make their community better. There's always going to be an opponent of doing it, and we take for granted. We stopped briefly over at the History Center across the street, and you take for granted all the things you've got, but somebody before we got here stepped forward and was an advocate for creating Iowa State University. And it had a different name at the time, but it was, I noticed it was 1858. I thought, so before the Civil War, somebody in this community said, we got to have a university. It's important to get it going. I mean, unquestionably, they had opponents. Unquestionably, they had somebody said, no, it's a waste of money. Why educate the kids? They can work on the farm like I did or whatever. You got hard heads wherever you go. And there had to be plenty of hard heads saying no. So democracy is very difficult, and it really does depend upon people at the local level being willing to step up and be county commissioners and city council people and be in the legislature and all the rest of it. And it is exciting for me. It's about time some county in Iowa turned the whole damn thing over to women. So that makes sense to me as well. Well, you know, as to the political environment, it's deeply troubling to me. I'm 76 years old, and I'm still alive, obviously, and I'm worried. I'm worried because it's the first time in my lifetime I've not been able to say to my children, admire that president. I disagree with Ronald Reagan, I disagree with George Herbert Walker Bush, I disagree with whoever, but I admire the individual. I admire their values. I cannot say that today. I was raised that if you insult somebody, you apologize. If you tell a lie and get caught, in particular, you apologize. You fess up to it. And whatever, there may be people in this room that are still supporting President Trump. He insults people all the time. He behaves differently than any president I've ever seen, and seems to be getting away with it. And it's troubling to me to have somebody that just time and time again will tell something that isn't true, will lie to his audience. And it's not good. It's not good that we've lowered the bar. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who's my best friend in the Senate, had this expression that we're defining deviancy down. Well, that's what's happening. We're defining deviancy down. And it shouldn't be that way. We should have a higher standards for our political leaders, not lower standards. We shouldn't tolerate this kind of behavior. It's impossible today to get to the debate. To talk about what should our immigration policy be. Oh no, you can't talk about immigration because the president's going to tweet something ugly about you. It's harder actually for Republicans in many ways than it is for Democrats. Because he says, if you're not loyal to me 100%, I'm going to tweet out and say and insult you and say nasty things about you. I don't care if I lie. I don't care what I say. I'm just trying to do damage to you personally. And it makes it difficult to get immigration reform done. It makes it difficult to improve the quality of health care and all kinds of other issues because you can't have an honest debate any longer. And it's a real problem. And I do hope, personally, that he becomes a former president in 2020, because it's just not acceptable to me to have this country that I love be led this way. I was in Sioux City, Iowa, practicing pharmacy at a drugstore that no longer exists, Toller Drug. And I told JD I finished a 5-year pharmacy program in 4. I was 3 hours short of graduating, and my last 3 hours were at Morningside. And I got a letter from the United States government. My draft status had changed, and they said my first experience with socialized medicine. They gave me a free physical examination down in Omaha, Nebraska. And they found me fit to serve. So the government had a higher and better use of my skills. And the next thing you know, I'm a member of SEAL Team 1, and I got injured in Vietnam, and I came home. And my life is so much better today as a consequence of a couple of federal laws. The marketplace didn't save me. I mean, yes, I had to get up in the morning and put on my pants and muscle through all of it, but I had surgeries at a government hospital in Lincoln and in Omaha. And I wouldn't be the same without those surgeries. I couldn't afford to pay for them. I don't think my family could have afforded to pay it. And the government helped me. The federal law, get some additional education and provided some financial support for me. And I still, this prosthesis I'm wearing cost $16,000. And all the time I was in Nebraska in politics, I'd get called upon to visit with families who had suffered oftentimes a traumatic injury on the farm. And they didn't have health insurance to pay for their prosthetics. And I'm sitting there thinking, something wrong about this. I have a claim under federal law on their income to pay for my prosthetics. And maybe it's, some fraction of a penny per person every year, or some pitiful fraction. They didn't have a claim on me. Because if they have a claim on me, that's socialized medicine. And all I can say is, that claim I got on you saved my life, changed my life permanently. And for the naysayers, for the Steve Kings of the world, he needs to know it didn't make me lazy.
That's right.
It made me grateful. There isn't a day goes by that I don't wake up being grateful for I've been born in the United States of America, to have won the ovarian lottery and had 2 parents who met at Iowa State. I'm fortunate. I was way ahead on points when I was born. I'm way ahead on points today, and almost all of it comes from a couple of simple laws that were on the books at the time, and I didn't have any power. When President Trump ran for office, he promised to drain the swamp. The swamp's gotten bigger. And I don't mean physically, I actually like swamps generally, but this swamp is way too many people with big corporate power have power over federal agencies. We have former lobbyists running the EPA, a former lobbyist running the Interior Department, and now we find out we have a former lobbyist in charge of airplane safety. It's already a problem in Washington, D.C., with people with a lot of money have way more power than they ought to. I didn't have any power in 1969, none. There wasn't a politician I liked in 1969, let alone made any kind of a contribution to. And yet here's this simple law that dramatically altered and changed my life. And as Lisa said in the introduction, the great gift to me is I can see pain. I do understand what it's like to help one another. On Monday, I'm going to be marching in the 100th anniversary of Veterans Day in New York City. And it causes me to sort of think, what's Veterans Day all about? And yes, it is about veterans and people who served, but I think it's an opportunity to think about what are our shared values? What values do I have that you have as well? What are they? What is it that unites us as Americans? As particularly at a time where things are so divisive. And there's simple things. I value unselfish behavior. My daughter just had her 8th chemo in Omaha. She had breast cancer, and she had 7 or 8 of her friends showed up to ring the bell for her last treatment on Thursday. And they're unselfish, completely unselfish. It was inconvenient for them to show up and be with her. We value unselfish behavior. We value honesty. We do value freedom. Although I can tell you, freedom meant a lot more to me as a consequence of the Veterans Administration than it would have without that help. We value courage. especially courage where you stand up and dissent. In political democracy, sometimes the most important thing, you got 100 people saying yes, is that one person stands up and says no. It's one of the worst things about President Trump, where he take any dissent as a sign of disloyalty. I value dissent. I want to hear dissent inside the Republican Party. I want to hear dissent inside the Democratic Party. There's a list of things that we share. We tend to care about our family. We tend to care about our churches. We tend to care about our local community. And we volunteer and get involved. Last year, Americans gave away $400 billion of cash and about the same amount in volunteer time. It's larger than the GDP of all but 15 countries on Earth. And it's the volunteer time that impresses me the most. I spent 9 months at another government hospital in Philadelphia. And the most important thing I got there were volunteers that would come in and they just put a hand on you and say, it's going to be all right. It's amazing, the power of human kindness. And we value it. We don't value insults. We value kindness. We value pulling together when things get tough. That's who we are as Americans. And I'm proud of it, and I feel good about it. And I'm going to feel an awful lot better in 2021 when I can say that Donald J. Trump is a former president of the United States. Thank you very much. You want to come back up? Now what? Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll take questions. Yes.
Do you think Nebraska will ever see another Democrat in the governorship or in the Senate?
Yes, I do. I mean, the problem in Nebraska is we let the party go to pot, and it matters. You know, I mean, yes, it's in some ways easier being independent because you don't have to worry about defending positions your party takes. But we've got a weak Democratic Party, and we had a strong Democratic. I won in 1982. We had a strong party. I won in 88. We had a strong party. I won in 94. We had a strong party. It's not strong now, and you got to strengthen that party. I mean, look what happened in Virginia. That wasn't just a vote against Donald Trump. The Virginia Democratic Party have been working really hard to build themselves up and get the people of Virginia comfortable with who they are and what they'll do if they get elected. Because oftentimes, you know, Democrats can be just as sometimes crazy as Republicans. I mean, if you hold a position that's completely at odds with your community, don't be surprised if your community doesn't support you. It isn't that I don't think it's important to take on public opinion, because in democracy, I've experienced this many times where the most dangerous thing is uninformed public opinion. I'm not saying don't take on public opinion, but if everything you're for is at odds with the local community, it's a bit of a problem. So what Nebraska Democratic Party needs to do is develop a platform that, you know, conservative Republicans say, well, I don't like the Democrats, but they've got a pretty darn good platform. It will work for me. Especially, you know, we're talking about communities under 1,000, especially rural communities. They do feel like they've been left behind. And they feel like they've been left behind because they have been left behind. So yeah, I think it will happen. I hope it happens. Because I think it matters. I think it matters to have political diversity. And particularly since I'm a Democrat, I think it matters to have Democrats in office. Yes.
You're 2 years younger than some of our leading presidential candidates. Are you thinking of running for office again?
No, one ex-wife's enough. No, I mean, but I do intend to stay involved. You know, to write checks when I can, to give advice when it's asked for, to stay engaged. I mean, I do. I'm on 3 not-for-profits in New York City. I'm on the board of an honors program at my alma mater. I'm trying to do the same thing with a school in Omaha, Creighton University, where my son went, in spite of the fact, I don't want to go down the story. We had a little problem with the church back there. But yeah, I think there's a lot that you can do without necessarily being a candidate. And I do think, you know, if I stay alive and stay healthy, I'll stay involved. Yes?
What's the key message we need to have to win back the male voters that don't have college degrees and thought that Trump was going to they believe just promises. How do we get them back? Working class, the ones in Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and Ohio.
Look, okay, so here's the baseline issue. There are two kinds of people in politics: people who can count and people who lose.
Yes.
That's the only two kinds of people. I mean, it's on one sort of crude level. Anybody in this room, myself included, comes out of the Milwaukee Convention as the Democratic nominee with 194 electoral votes. Anybody. We're going to win California, we're going to win Oregon, Washington, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. I mean, there are states I can say with absolute certainty we're going to win. But now you got to get another 76. And you got to have Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and, you know, there is a just God if we get Ohio. Well, we had 4 successful Democratic candidates in all 4 of those states in the midterm. And we had 3 successful gubernatorial candidates in all but Ohio. We almost won Ohio. You got to look at what they ran on. I mean, I'll just be explicit. They ran on Joe Biden's agenda. It's not enough to say, I like what you're for. The question is, can you win in those states? I think there's a number of the Democratic candidates who can win in those states, but I am 100% certain that Joe Biden can. And I believe he'll be a phenomenal president, but I believe he can beat Trump. And he can't be president unless he can beat Trump. So, you know, I think specifically to your question, we do tend to talk down to people that, I mean, I was at the New School for 10 years. I can't tell you the number of times people come up to me and look down their nose and say, so, where did you go to school? And they were wondering, did I go to Groton? Did I go to Yale? Did I go to Harvard? Did I go to one of those places? I said, well, I went to the University of Nebraska. I have a degree in pharmacy. Oh, well, about face, and they go talk to somebody else. I mean, the elites have moved away from everybody else. I don't know if you read this book, Coming Apart, that Charles Murray wrote about Newton, Iowa, and Maytag. You know, everybody knew what Mr. Maytag made, that he was 4 or 5 times the average wage in the factory. Then he retired, and the new CEO didn't want to live in Newton anymore. It's too boring. So he moved to, the next CEO moved to Des Moines, and then that was too boring, moved to Chicago. And then it was eventually New York City. And by the time they get to New York City, it was like 1,000 times more. His wage was 1,000 times more than the average wage in the factory. And eventually, Whirlpool buys him, and 3,000 jobs in Newton are gone. So 75% of the people in Nebraska didn't go to college. So one of the things we have to be careful about in our proposals is, if we do free college, we're basically saying we were going to tax the people that didn't go to college to pay for the people who are going to college. I don't think that's necessarily a smart way to win back the votes of people who didn't go to college. I'm not sure it's a good idea anyway. I mean, I worked, yes, tuition was a lot less. I think personally there's a lot better ways of doing it other than to ask people who didn't go to college to pay to go to other people to go to college. And I think you've got to go a lot further in getting apprenticeship programs going and other sorts of things. But you can't leave the impression that you actually think that you're smarter than they are. It's possible you are. And if you are, fake it. Because if somebody presumes that you're smarter than they are and you're asking for their vote, and if you just understood, you'd support trade. If you weren't so stupid, you'd support technology. If you weren't so dumb, you'd support unrestricted immigration. And that's what they hear. It's not going to win them back because they aren't wrong about trade. And they aren't wrong about unrestricted immigration. And they aren't wrong about technology. It doesn't mean that we have to stop being concerned about people coming to the United States of America. It doesn't mean that we have to all become racist as a consequence of that fact. It doesn't mean that we have to ignore that we're a part of the world. It doesn't mean that we have to ignore the advantage of technology. It's just that you can't ignore that they feel legitimately in some cases like all 3 of those things are pushing their wages down. Yes?
So how do you propose to solve the issue with social media and this very same problem? Because we have on both sides very negative, constant social media
Right.
that is really destroying
Well, first of all, I think we're going to have to change the way we regulate Facebook and Twitter and those social. They keep claiming they're not media companies, but they are media companies. And 20 years ago, we had gatekeepers. We may not like the publisher. May have thought he was too liberal or too conservative or too stupid or whatever, but you had a gatekeeper, professional gatekeeper. And they decided whether or not they're going to put something in the newspaper or put it on the radio, put it on television. And that's gone. So, what it does is it opens up the avenues for anybody that's got a conspiracy to link up with others that have conspiracy, and they work it hard. And you can weaponize social media today. Weaponize it in, that's basically what the Russians did in the 2016 election, and the Iranians are doing it now. So it's easy to take something that provides something good. I use particularly Google to answer questions that I've got, but man, it rewards bad behavior. It rewards insults. It rewards anger and hate. And look, I left the governor's office in 1986, and because I had 4 or 5 things I wanted to do, and I got them all done, and I was, okay, so it's time to move on. So I went back to private life, and a very good friend of mine was the chair of the Department of Religious Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara, Walter Capps, who later ran for Congress and won, and sadly died his first year in office. And he said, why don't you come out to Santa Barbara and help me teach a class on the Vietnam War? Well, it's either, January, February, March in Santa Barbara, or January, February, March in Omaha. Okay, yes, I'll do it. And I learned about the war. I didn't know things I didn't know about. And up until that time that I was out there, I hated Richard Nixon. Hated him. And I don't mean intellectually hated him, but hated him. So, one night I walked down to the beach and shouted into the ocean that I forgave him. And I'm sure it had no impact on him, sleeping, sawing logs in his New York apartment. But the burden was lifted from me. It's the hater that hurts. It's not the person that gets. And I think we have to talk openly about that. What happens if you hate somebody? What does it do to you? It can devour you from the inside. It can ruin you as a human being. It's very difficult in that environment either to accept kindness or deliver it. And I said it. Kindness is the most powerful, lowest cost force in nature. And we're free to distribute it if we want to. And among the things I learned in the hospital, I went in there as a rough, tough SEAL team, and I couldn't do anything, even couldn't go in the bathroom without asking for somebody to help me. And I do think we have to start talking honest about it, and not being hateful to somebody who's hating, but tell them you're the one that's getting hurt by this. I don't think it's going to have the impact that it had in 16. I think Americans are a lot more alert, but it does tend to encourage people to talk and hang out with people that are just like them. And I found in my lifetime that's almost always a dangerous thing to do. Yes?
Last question.
Sorry.
This might be a little more personal question, but during the action you were awarded the Medal of Honor, what exactly was going through your mind throughout that?
Oh man, I don't know. Really, I mean, let me return the question with a question. You know the difference between a war story and a fairy tale? A fairy tale always starts once upon a time, and a war story always begins, no shit, this is true, I was there. So, it was 50 years ago. Honestly, I don't remember. I've made up what I was thinking at the time, but I don't remember. Thanks. Thank you.
Well, I once again want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I apologize. We do have Ames City Councilman David Martin that is here. So, David, thank you for being here. Again, I want to thank all of you for supporting me in my first run as county supervisor, but thank you for all of your support over the years. And again, thank you to all the volunteers that helped. Phyllis for coordinating, and there's so many volunteers, I'd be almost afraid to list all of you off because I know I will miss folks. So thank you. Thank you to my husband again for playing the music. There's still some food. There's still some food left. And, you know, whoever your presidential candidate is, our big thing is we've got to get people out to caucus. They've got to get out to vote. There are a number of times where we said this is an important election, but I truly believe this is probably one of the most important elections. And I look forward to campaigning and visiting with you and with your neighbors. So thank you all for being here tonight.